1. A few years ago, I worked armed security at a hospital. The Greater Health System owned 3 large hospitals, each with a 24-hour trauma center. It had a couple of smaller county hospitals and dozens of clinics scattered across 3 states. I worked at one of the bigger hospitals in a bad part of town. There were legitimate security threats on a daily basis here. One day I was told to stand at the main entrance and keep staff out. "Huh?" I said. Apparently some middle management person wrote a new policy that staff members are to enter and exit the building through the west entrance only. The main entrance was to be used by patients and guests, and they didn't want employees cluttering the main entrance, because God forbid people see medical staff upon entering a hospital. My task was to stand at the door and tell nurses, doctors, cafeteria staff, facilities, janitors, etc. to use the west entrance. Anyone who refused had their name written down and would be reprimanded later. Now, I had other things to worry about, like EDPs fighting in the ER, or people running onto the helipad and taking a selfie with the life flight patient, or dudes on PCP yelling at the wheelchairs, or the old woman with dementia who wandered off and can't find her room, actual security problems. The main entrance posting was a waste of my time, and it dragged on for several days, until one day, a man wearing a suit, leading a gaggle of important people, all in business attire. The ringleader had an employee ID badge, and was speaking enthusiastically to the group. They were heading straight for the main entrance. "Sorry folks, gotta use the west entrance." "What?" "Hospital policy, all employees must use the west entrance." "We're going to use this entrance," as he points to the door. "Okay, but I'll need to take your names down. Your supervisor will be informed." The ringleader stares at me like the biggest idiot alive and holds his ID badge in front of my face for an uncomfortably long time. I took down his name and every single member of his gaggle with painful slowness. I should add they were all very polite, despite the fact that I obviously didn't care at all. Shortly after, the security supervisor arrives. "How's it going?" "Not bad, I have a dozen or so names," and I show him the list. "Is that—" he points to the ringleader's name. "I don't know, his badge said Chief something officer." He looked important. "Chief Executive Officer?" "Yeah, I think that was it." The supervisor quickly walks away. It turns out the CEO of the health system was bringing a group of potential investors, the aforementioned gaggle, for a tour of the place. He was never informed of the main entrance policy change, and was greatly embarrassed to be stopped at the entrance of his own hospital by some rent-a-cop. Suddenly, as if by magic, staff could use the main entrance again, and I could return to my actual security work. 2. I live in Portugal. Here, when something happens at a commercial space, you write in the complaints book. My parents own a business, which means I'm fairly well informed about how these things work. I had recently had an encounter at this kiosk with this man, and he lingered on my card, checking numbers, names, flipped it over, looking at the CVV. It was uncomfortable. On to the exchange. "Good morning, I would like 2 packs of Winston 126 cigarettes." He proceeds to ask me for my card with a hand gesture. "Is 12.20, hand gesture again. "I would prefer to insert the card myself." "You can't do that." "I won't touch the machine at all, only insert the card." He throws the machine down in disbelief. "I can't let you do that." "Are you refusing service?" "Yes." I ask for the complaints book. He refused, which legally he can't, but it was just me and him. I wait until another client shows up and I ask for it again. He relents and gives it to me. As I open it, I realize I didn't have a pen. You have to write out your complaint. I ask for one, he refuses, I say okay. As soon as I open the book, I see something wrong. The first complaint is completely ripped out, as are all 3 pages. The first page is for the person who makes the complaint, the second is a copy for the business, and the third is to remain in the book. Under no circumstance is the third page to disappear. Even if it's a mistake or taken back by the person who makes the complaint, it must remain in the book. Seeing as I had no pen, I start the process online, take the info and start snapping pictures of the missing pages. As soon as he saw me taking pictures, he does a beeline from around the counter to me and tries to take the book away. I said I have every right to keep this book until I'm done with my complaint. He gets huffy and more clients show up. He goes back behind the counter. The thing about the complaints book is you write it in ink, but then you have to follow through and submit them online to the proper authority depending on the complaint. But I didn't have a pen, so I bypassed the ink format and immediately submitted online, mentioning the weird analysis of my card, the refusal of service, and as the last middle finger, I also mentioned the missing pages with pictures of the missing pages itself, including the business stamp in the name of the picture, so they can't refute and say it's some other book. Now, because it was online, it goes straight to the authority assay, and you can choose which department depending on the complaint. After an hour of nicotine withdrawal, of looking the business up, the pictures, the writing the complaint itself, I hand the book in with no written complaint. He opens it and chuckles to himself and smugly says, "Did you give up because you didn't have a pen?" I say no. Because I didn't have a pen, I decided to submit it directly online as my last mic drop moment. I said I didn't feel comfortable writing it in the book as the first complaint had magically disappeared from the book. The color drained from his face because we both knew what would happen. Even if they don't take the complaint seriously, tampering with the book is absolutely taken seriously, and that absolutely will be followed up and fined accordingly. Then I smiled and said I wish I had a pen, and left. 3. I'm a 24-year-old woman, had been seeing the dentist more often because I now have insurance. The last time I went to a dentist was when I was about 14 or 15. My dentist said a lot of my teeth are salvageable, but I did need to get a lot of teeth pulled, 7 to be exact. It took a couple of months to get my teeth pulled and everything, and when it did, oh my lord. The front desk lady told me I'm gonna be on antibiotics and pain medication. I'm still kinda recovering. My gums are pretty sensitive, but overall fine. My brother, 27, was my ride, so I called him fresh out of surgery, and he's like, "You done with surgery?" I responded, "Yeah, but my mouth was stuffed with gauze." "I have no idea what you said, but I'm assuming you said yes." He came and got me, and the nurse and my brother had to help me in his truck. We went to the pharmacy, but they were on lunch break. After waiting 30 minutes, their lunch was over. My brother left me in the truck and went into the convenience store. He was in there for a while, like 15 minutes. To most that doesn't seem long, but to me, since the anesthesia was beginning to wear off, I was squirming in discomfort. While my brother was in the store, the pharmacist was giving him a really hard time, telling him that they need my ID and all that fun stuff. Cue the malicious compliance. My brother walked out, told me everything, and I began to cry. Just picture an adult woman with baby face, swollen, delirious, in pain, and fresh out of surgery, looking like she was trying to do the chubby bunny challenge. Anyway, my brother took me out of his truck, and he had to guide me. So all the customers in the store, all they saw was a scrawny twig dragging a barely conscious noodle to the pharmacy. He sat me down in one of the chairs. I handed him my ID. The pharmacist was about to give him a hard time again, but then he pointed in my direction. All he saw was a lost adult, drooling and bleeding clearly out of it, fresh out of surgery. And the look on his face was just glorious. He handed my brother the medication without much complaint, and we left. And before anyone gets onto my brother's case that he didn't need to drag me into the store, I want to make it clear, even then, I did not care how silly I looked. I was too busy thinking about pink axolotls on stairs and how bad I needed a nap. Even looking back, I chuckle about it. Before I go, I want to clear a couple of things up. We're not mad at the pharmacist or anything, mildly annoyed at most. We did not know that the painkillers would be narcotics. Since I always pick up my dad's medication, none of us saw any reason as to why they suddenly needed my ID for meds. Then my brother dropped me back at the motel. Story for another day. I just plopped onto the bed, and my brother gave my dad my meds to make sure I took them. My dad saw that the meds were narcotics, and he explained to us what they were. Was I listening to that conversation? Hell no, I was out like a light. 4. From 2022 to 2023, I lived with 3 other girls in a college apartment for a year. Beautiful apartment. I miss it. They all had been friends since high school, and I needed a place to stay, and upon meeting them at first, I was excited to get to know new people and experienced a good year living with them. The lease began in June 2022, and from June to November 2022, we all got along just fine. I have a dog-sitting business, and it was really picking up around that time. In hindsight, I would never have gotten an apartment as I was barely there, unfortunately. In November 2022, my best friend spent the night at said apartment. A few days passed after our sleepover, and I just got back from a dog-sitting job. I saw a blanket in my room that was not mine. I asked my best friend if it was hers. She said no. I texted the group chat with my roommates, and they all did not claim the blanket. Thought it was weird, so I tossed it on the couch in the living room for someone to claim. Fast forward, maybe a few weeks or something. I noticed a t-shirt that was not mine in my room. Again asking them if it was theirs, none collected. I do not do my laundry at the apartment as I live close by, and just take my stuff home so it never gets mixed up with their stuff. More time passed at this point, and I find women's underwear in my bedroom. Again, I text the group chat whose it is. No one claims it. I know it's not mine, as it's not the same size as all my other pairs, and I only buy the same size. This was very weird at this point. I've asked them in the past if anyone slept in my room, or even used it to do the deed. To be honest, if they asked me ahead of time if their friends could crash in my room, as I'm not there dog-sitting sometimes, I would 100% be cool with it. No one has ever stolen anything in my room, but I found more items in my room that are not mine. I considered getting a camera, but to be honest, if someone is having sex in my room, I do not want that on camera. As I said, no one ever stole anything, so it was never that deep to me, but I was confused why they kept lying. The last item I found was close to the end of our lease, ended in May 2023, and I found an Apple Watch. That is not cheap, so when I asked whose it was, no one claimed it. They were all well off, so I guess they didn't care. They really did not want to admit anything or take back an expensive item that was probably one of their friends. Free Apple Watch. I was so confused and shocked, so I asked the landlord if I could put a lock on my door, and explained the situation with the screenshots of our group chat. The landlord said I could not due to the lease agreement. I was kinda ticked at this point because I was being gaslit into thinking all these items are mine. One of the girls even said, "Maybe your stuff got mixed in with the wash." I told her how I don't do the wash at the apartment. She had nothing else to say. When we finally moved out, I made sure to avoid them at this point because it was too awkward. Nothing came of it, but I think back on it occasionally, and I still could not fathom why they let people in my room, even if it was a mistake. They could have easily said, "Sorry, we didn't know people were in your room." And I would have said, as long as you ask, it's cool with me. So with all that being said, I was in charge of the Wi-Fi. I turned the Wi-Fi off occasionally whenever this happened. They used the library to do work, or a friend's house, so it's not like they couldn't get their work done. But I was admittedly petty, and shut the Wi-Fi down on occasion. 5. 15 years ago, I worked at a gas station as an opener. Because I was young and somewhat tech-savvy, I was also the de facto IT for the 3 stores near me, and had been heavily involved in setting up a new point-of-sale (POS) system for their 2 most successful stores when they were swapped from one gas brand to another. The company had made me the super admin on all registers just for ease of transition. Remember this later. The owner's wife had been awful to me for the 2 years that I worked there. I got bumped to opener by her husband, and she hated having a man be an opener. Historically, every single opener was picked by her and was a woman. But her husband came and fired the previous opener for theft while the 2 of us swapping shifts. So I got a field promotion, of sorts. The wife was constantly scrutinizing everything that I did, constantly calling me in the mornings to be rude and berate me for a bunch of minor things that I did wrong. "You used wet wipes on the area around the drink machine. I want you to use paper towels and spray." We were out of paper towels, and the spray we had smelled like a hospital anyway. "I came in your store last night and there were 3 rows of Snapple Apple. You could probably increase sales by putting 1 or 2 of those rows to a different product." Even though the Snapple fridge was 100% handled by the vendor, and we signed a contract that we wouldn't change the layout of the product, etc., etc. I got a new job offer and gave her husband 2 weeks' notice, but never told her because I did my very best to avoid talking to her unless necessary. When she found out, it was Tuesday of my last week, and she legitimately lost her mind. Gave me a ton of stuff to do and worked me to the bone until 2 p.m. on the last Friday I worked. Finally, the time to depart forever came. Bye. She personally came with an office worker and stood by me, and asked me to delete my account from the register. I knew I was a super admin, and had been told if I ever left to convert the account. She had been told this, but had long forgotten about it, so I said to hell with it, and complied, then went to the other store and did likewise while she watched. I go about my life, start my new job, and end up about 3 weeks in when I get a frantic voicemail and like 20 texts and calls from her. I called the office worker who had stood over my shoulder with her and got the scoop. She basically couldn't change any prices at all. When new beer and soda prices started rolling out, and her new opener had just let it all pile up because she didn't know how to do it, and they were going to have someone come train her. They had a bunch of items 5 or 10% below the price they were supposed to be at. Margins on cases of beer are low, and this was nooking their profits. Once I thought it over, I texted her and said, "You asked me to do this, it's on video, and we have 3 witnesses. The person she had me training, the person I swapped with, and the office worker, who had quit in the 2 weeks since." Click. I found out later that they ended up spending $6,000 to get the company back out to fix the issue. The boss's wife legit had a Facebook page at one point with people planning to crap on her grave when she eventually died. So I wasn't the only person she was awful to, but I do feel like I got one up on her, and it feels good. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 404. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button and subscribe if you'd be so good. That lets YouTube know that you enjoyed the video, and that they should recommend it to other people. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do that by supporting me on my Patreon page. There's a link to that in the description. You can go there and support me for $1 or more a month if you'd like. It is appreciated. You can also buy merchandise. There's a link to that in the description too. And if you'd like to leave a one-off tip, you can do that for this or any other video by clicking on the heart with the $sign underneath. Or is it a $sign with a heart around it? We should probably assemble a panel and investigate that. Right, I don't think we have any more bits of business today. Nope, I think everything's covered for now. So let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, when was the last time you were proud of yourself for not legitimately losing your mind over something? The reason I mentioned that is recently, since the 12th of December, I've been having trouble with the gas company. They installed a smart meter, as you've probably heard me mention before, but it's not been working correctly since then. It's stuck in the wrong mode. And I have called them many, many times since the 12th of December, so we're almost 3 months in now, and it's still not been fixed. And every time I've called them up, I have been polite, I have been courteous, I have not raised my voice, because I'm not going to yell at the person on the other end of the phone. It's not their fault, even though they keep promising me I'm going to do this, going to do that, and nothing ever fixes it. So right now, I called again today, and after they said they'd call me and didn't, but I guess they were busy, so fair enough. Not like I don't have a full day's work to do. And so I called, and today finally they're going to send an engineer out to swap the meter over with another one, or to check that it's been installed correctly, and if it's not been installed correctly, maybe swap it over. Hopefully that fixes it this time, because it's been kind of a nightmare dealing with it. Not really able to use my heating properly because it's not been correctly installed. I mean, it works, it's just I like to use a prepay system instead of a credit system. I like to keep the bills to a minimum if I can avoid it, like phone bill and that sort of thing. So they'll be here at some point on Monday, and fingers crossed this actually fixes it this time. But I'm dubious, very, very dubious. Anyway, let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And today's answer comes from Revenge is Ice Cream 234, and I think this was about morning routines. Today's answer comes from Bethany. Put on my glasses, grab my phone, check for messages, get out of bed, go pee, let dogs out into backyard, feed the cats, make my coffee. That's my mornings. Thank you very much for your answer, Bethany. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.